Hi, I'm not Paul Beckwith, but this is, and I wanted to make this little video because I came across something recently that I believe helps put a little bit of his work into perspective, and I wanted to share that. And it's a question and answer session following a video presentation to the Canadian Club of Rome. And I didn't want to present it without commentary because that just feels like stealing, but I'm going to play that now and then add a little bit more commentary later.
I actually put in the very first comment in the whole chat session about Mars and the moon. So I would argue that, Elon Musk has thought deeply about all of these questions, and his whole life and his whole set of companies is geared to doing exactly what you're talking about, but in his vision of he wants geographical separation between people on the earth and, a sustainable civilization. He's talking about Mars, right? Colonies on Mars. And so his whole goal for his existence, I mean, you can get quotes from him 25 years ago saying he wanted to make humans a multiplanetary species. So every single company that he has is connected to that, if you look at it. I just, in fact, released a video last night on talking about him and all these connections. And I really think one of the best ways to address climate change is to just block a small fraction of the sunlight hitting the Earth. And I think that SpaceX's new heavy launch capability and the drop of a factor of 10 or 20 from any previous launch capability can actually start deploying things like that. Now, if you separate them, so I would argue that, a city-state on the moon and one on Mars would be a much better way to go. And you may laugh at all of this, possibly, and say this is absolutely absurd and ridiculous, but I would argue that we've got this one billionaire who has completely revolutionized the car industry, the space industry, the large military contractors that have historically supplied the U.S. space program, etc. None of them can believe how far and how quickly Musk has gone. So, I highly recommend you read his biographies that are written by other people. And I would argue that he's probably thinking of deploying something like a solar shade up in space. He's talking about everything else, but he hasn't directly talked about that. He recognizes a very narrow window to possibly do this. A narrow window that is narrowing ever more. But if you look at every single one of his companies, he's very concerned about the issues that we're all concerned about. I mean, look at Tesla and the purpose, Solar City, the Boring Company to bore tunnels under the ground, which in cities for transportation, but it would be a great place to have people living, on Mars or the moon. Hyperloop, transporting people in a near vacuum at aircraft speeds from one city to another. Ideal on the moon and Mars, the vacuum is there. His Neuralink company, his OpenAI company, every single thing he does is geared to keeping humans alive long term. That's his whole reason of being. So anyway, I highly recommend that you look at his stuff in detail. I mean, is this thing going to work? But he's got some of the best engineers from all of the other aerospace companies, and they're delivering all the time. They're delivering left, right, and center. So I think he's familiar with all of these ideas that you're talking about, and he's actually doing the engineering with all of his companies to try to achieve that. That's my whole argument.
So that is a fairly recent video. It's from spring of 2022, and you may have found it as interesting as I have, largely because it seems to suggest that, I mean, we know that he's very pro-geoengineering and also apparently pro-colonizing Moon and Mars, and a big fan of Elon Musk. And this is kind of news to me, but it does kind of put some things in perspective in the sense that it seems like he has largely dismissed hope for Earth and seems to be more aligning himself with, go for techno fixes, go for anything but degrowth. I don't think I've really seen him talk about degrowth, but I also don't follow him that closely. But this is his YouTube about, and he calls himself a climate system science educator, um, and these things. I had shown his CV earlier, where he's a part-time professor in climatology, working on PhD since 2011. He seems to have abandoned that, and there's a video that I was looking at a little bit ago that talks about that a little bit. He is, he's a real scientist. He does, he knows his physics. He's published papers in physics. Well, kind of. Most of them are like conference papers, which are a little bit different. It's a little bit different than using a peer-reviewed journal. But anyway, so yeah, there's his CV and plenty of ads on this page. But I mean, it's all there on his page to see, because I think there was some debate recently on some online forums about, whether or not he actually is a climate scientist. And it's kind of like hazy. I don't know if I would call him one or not. He does know a lot about climate, but he seems to have the approach of already having made his mind up and then adapting what he sees to his pre-existing beliefs about climate, which is, just standard confirmation bias. But I had come across this video. This is the first thing that he posted on his blog here, where he's talking about the Arctic Methane Emergency Group. And he does note a couple of important things here. One, that he has that Sam Carana had already parted ways with the group. He had formerly been like their webmaster, and that he was kind of saying, yeah, I've had some disagreements with him, and he's kind of, him and Guy McPherson kind of like do their thing. And he also talks about not really seeing any point in continuing his PhD studies, because he's more concerned about being a communicator, sounding the alarm. He says, like, what's the point if the earth is literally like falling apart beneath my feet, or something along those lines. I mean, that's there for you to watch if you want, but that's, from back in 2014. Um, and it's like, okay, it's been like 10 years. If you've abandoned your studies, then maybe on your CV, you should make that say 2011 to 2013 or whatever it was you gave up, instead of to present, if you're not actively pursuing that anymore. But I started looking through some of the older posts from like 2014, 2015, where he's talking about, even this is after that video that I just showed, but he's like, oh, I was on Extinction Radio with Carolyn Baker and Guy McPherson. And it's like, okay, so you're not really distancing yourself from this that much. But I just kind of started looking at the archives, and he's doing lots of like guest appearances on Extinction Radio, lots of just very similar things to what you see today, even though this is nearly 10 years ago. Hasn't really changed a lot in the past 10 years. Um, very same things, except on this one, even though it's posted again after he talks about having parted ways with Sam Carana and kind of disagreeing on some of the math, but he still kind of is mentioning Sam's posts on this and that, using his graphics and that kind of thing. Um, because it's sensationalist is my best guess. And so what's the point of all of this? Like, what is his goal? I mean, he does want to sound the alarm, which he has been doing. Blog post on rap music. I would kind of like really quickly looked up, like, okay, what does he have here listed on ResearchGate? There are some papers that are conference papers that are related to when he was, doing physics stuff. I'm not sure if he's the lead author on any of these, but he's contributing. Oh, this one is. Yeah, he's contributing to conference papers. So I really just wanted to share that interesting tidbit and to help frame what we see coming from Paul, and in that way that he's not looking to degrow. He's looking for techno fixes. He's looking to other planets. He's looking to these alternatives, these ways of fixing the climate, but they're all kind of rooted in, like I was saying before, like kind of the confirmation bias thing, and that just understand that when Paul presents, it's not necessarily um, poorly done. He does have a lot of great interpretations of recent issues and data, but that to understand the lens that he sees things through, to understand what his motivations are, and so while we may agree on a whole lot of stuff, I would say, like, let's forget about Mars and the moon. Let's forget about geoengineering. Let's focus on consuming less, producing more of our own stuff, repairing old things, just having lower energy lifestyles. In other words, degrowth. I'm very keen on that. Um, and I want to encourage people to go that direction. So just something to keep in mind when you're watching his regular climate updates.